The coffee tasted perfect that morning, rich, hot, with just the right balance of smoothness and bite. That was the first sign something was deeply wrong. In all my years at Vanguard Defense Solutions, the catering crew never nailed it on briefing days. It was always bitter or cloying, usually tepid by the time it reached my desk. But today it felt intentional, like the universe was softening the blow before delivering the real hit. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'd been Security and Compliance Director at Vanguard for 14 years and 7 months. Don't let the title sound glamorous. It wasn't about flashy gadgets or dramatic chases. My role was to ensure no one, human or algorithm, put our multi-million-dollar Department of Defense contracts at risk. I approved clearances, managed SCF protocols, ran cyber exercises, and enforced every emergency procedure in the book. Most people in the building barely registered my existence until a server locked or a visitor badge lit up red. That's the mark of good security, invisible until it saves the day. I arrived early as usual, the parking lot still sparse under the pale Virginia dawn. I waved to Mike from facilities as he wrestled with the same loose panel by the loading dock he'd been taping for months. Some issues don't care about clearance levels. Inside, the headquarters felt unnaturally still. The executive corridor hummed with forced energy ahead of the big announcement. Starched shirts, polished shoes, interns clutching unnecessary clipboards with overly eager smiles. The digital directory had already been refreshed overnight. Victoria Lang, newly appointed Chief Operations Officer, had swapped the clean sans serif font for something sleek and trendy. It screamed disruption in every glossy curve. In my office, the systems reported normal, no unauthorized logins, no overdue audits, no flagged anomalies. That silence usually meant trouble was brewing off the books. In meetings I wasn't invited to, the calendar confirmed it. Mandatory all-hands reorganization briefing. No agenda attached. In corporate speak, that meant ambush. I'd survived 4 restructurings, 2 mergers, and 1 near miss with a major clearance violation. But Victoria was different. Fresh from back-to-back exits in civilian tech, none involving federal oversight or rigorous audits. She built her reputation slashing headcount and juicing margins, boasting about it in glossy profiles. Now she was parachuted into a defense contractor where moving a single monitor required 3 signatures and a risk assessment. I'd researched her. Naturally. She'd once dismissed compliance teams as overhead vampires and called information security a culture of fear. My position checked every box on her hit list. By 8:45 the conference room was standing room only. Victoria's assistant distributed glossy decks promising agility over legacy and operational reinvention. The slides appeared before the second round of coffee, an ominous sign. When Victoria entered, she commanded the space like she owned the air itself. Sleek blonde bob, tailored navy suit, heels striking the floor with metronomic precision. She smiled wide and bright, but her eyes stayed cool. Behind her, the org chart materialized on screen, boxes shifting, some vanishing. Mine erased entirely. She opened with a quip. Some of you look like I just declared mass layoffs. Relax. I'm here to give this place a vital upgrade, not a funeral. Nervous chuckles rippled. Victoria advanced the slides. Inefficiency waterfalls, redundancy matrices, legacy role realignments. I saw the connector line rerouting security compliance straight into support services provisional. She didn't glance my way when she said it. One role that exemplifies our evolution is our longtime security and compliance director position. Vital in its time, certainly, but in our modern, cloud-first compliance environment, we must reimagine what's truly essential. She paused, scanning faces. Effective today, Sarah Mitchell will spearhead front desk modernization, bringing strong interpersonal skills to our client-facing experience. Reception. The word landed like a quiet slap. I designed the post-audit lockdown protocols that passed the 2021 DoD review with flying colors. I'd uncovered a supply chain firmware vulnerability before it made headlines. Yet here I was, reassigned to greet delivery drivers and log toner shipments. Her tone shifted to practiced empathy. This isn't a step down. It's a strategic repositioning to place our best communicators at the brand's forefront. Strategic pivot. I felt the room's atmosphere thicken. Colleagues' eyes flicked toward me, then away. The general counsel studied her notes intently. The IT lead who once broke down in my office over a credentialing fiasco avoided my gaze. I rose without expression, walked to the podium, and placed a single physical copy of our primary DoD contract on the wood surface, dog-eared, tabbed in multiple colors. The real signed original. I said nothing, just slid it forward and returned to my seat. Victoria's smile faltered for a fraction of a second as she lifted it uncertainly, then continued her presentation. Lean principles. Next-gen compliance. Cultural reset. People pretended to jot notes, but the undercurrent had changed. They were calculating if she could sideline someone with my institutional memory who was truly safe. At 9:44 my badge flashed red. By 9:49 the org chart refreshed, my box grayed out. Labeled, Reception Transition Pending. The next morning I reported to the front desk in a cheap polo shirt that itched at the collar. The chair squeaked. The monitor angled awkwardly. A faded post-it clung to the phone. Line 3 only if you enjoy migraines. I adjusted the seat, logged in with now restricted credentials, and noted my clearance had been stripped at 6 a.m. Victoria moved fast, yet they'd overlooked updating root access on 3 audit logs. I spent that quiet first shift building what I privately called my not my responsibility dossier. Every bypassed override, every unsigned permission change, every SCAF trail manually greenlit despite red flags, logged meticulously. I didn't hide it. Between greeting couriers and issuing temp badges to wide-eyed new hires who barely understood controlled unclassified information, I clicked tabs methodically. Around 11 a.m., an IT specialist stopped by with a hesitant smile. "Sarah, everything holding up?" "Just fine," I replied, gesturing to the taped reception script on the wall. He laughed a bit too heartily. Mid-morning the facilities coordinator hurried down, frazzled. The main vault door refused to seat properly. Logs weren't syncing with backup power readings. She asked if I had insights. I met her eyes evenly. "I'm just handling reception these days. But page 12 of the emergency binder still lists my old contact." She blinked, thanked me quietly, and left slower than she arrived. After lunch, rumors drifted like smoke. DCA pre-audit accelerated. I didn't react outwardly when I overheard it near the elevators. Instead, I opened a private OneNote tab labeled Audit Preparedness Ghosts and began cross-referencing legacy access chains, archiving orphan documents, flagging 4 fresh gaps introduced since Monday. Victoria strode past twice, phone pressed to ear, a smirk fixed, discussing shedding emotional baggage from entrenched roles with someone likely in her Denver network of motivational consultants. At 2:50 p.m., an internal calendar invite arrived from legal. SCEF oversight clarification session, optional. I accepted anyway. Then I reopened the full contract. Clause 4.7b still listed me explicitly as the designated key person for security oversight. Binding. Unchanged. Tuesday at 3:12 a.m. The vault triggered a phantom fault alarm. No breach. Just 6 confused personnel scrambling without protocol guidance. The system demanded escalation to the key person. The field sat empty. When I arrived at 7:30, the front desk phone blinked with 5 voicemails. Facilities. Legal. a program manager whispering urgently, and one of pure silence followed by a hesitant, "Sarah, we're not sure who to route this to." My limited backdoor access remained open. Someone had forgotten to sever it. Logs showed 5 false positives cleared manually by uncleared staff. A hard-coded override sat exposed. By 10 a.m., remote access sessions began timing out. SCF workstations failed key exchange verification. Cyber labeled it transient handshake delay, corporate code for "we have no idea." I spotted the IT intern at the vending machine, staring at his phone in quiet panic. Around noon, Janine from compliance appeared, competent but anxious, eyes darting. "Quick question, where's the master SCF protocol sign-off sheet?" I reached beneath the counter, produced a faded 2017 folder containing a half-completed form bearing my old signature block. "This appears to be the latest authorized version." She accepted it gingerly, as if radioactive, and retreated. The week settled into quiet desperation disguised as casual inquiries. Colleagues drifted by the desk with questions they could no longer ask officially. "Have vendor access codes been refreshed? Do you recall the sign-off on the last intrusion drill? Weren't we due to renew the temporary SCF list?" For each I smiled, retrieved the relevant page from my growing file, and handed over black and white evidence of proper procedure now ignored. By Thursday, I documented 9 direct failures traceable to the dismantled security function. Victoria never visited the desk, but security camera feeds showed her in the boardroom laughing over catered lunches while staff below ran drills with broken custody chains and invalid proxies. Someone attempted to patch the vault by reassigning physical keys. It failed. The server still demanded my original biometric. Now invalid. Logs timed out repeatedly, trapping the system in a loop only the absent key person could resolve. I watched it unravel from my squeaky chair, refusing to intervene. Legacy roles didn't meddle with innovation. After all, every whispered who used to manage this made the building feel a fraction smaller, quieter. Then came the Excel tracker buried deep in the compliance drive, a single red cell glowing like an open wound when legal cross-checked key personnel for renewal. The junior counsel scrolled, puzzled. "Why is this marked unassigned?" Victoria waved it off breezily from the head of the table. "We've streamlined the role into facility services. Functions remain covered. Legal pressed. Key person clauses don't work that way." She pivoted to onboarding timelines, calling the designation largely ceremonial. I wasn't present, but 30 minutes later senior analyst Mike dropped his tablet on my counter without preamble. Face pale. The contract lay open to Clause 142A naming Sarah Mitchell as key person. The red cell stared back. She called it legacy filler, said we could annotate and push through. I read the yellow advisory note. Changes required 30-day notice and written justification to the DoD contracting officer. "You escalated?" Mike nodded. DSTA pinged 7 minutes ago. That 7-minute mark lit the fuse. DSTA receipt triggered preliminary risk flagging. Without resolution inside 48 hours, the contract would flag non-compliant, freezing disbursements and notifying the contracting officer. Mike ran a hand over his neck. "She'll try fixing it with another org chart slide." I replied softly. "She'll try. She won't succeed." By day's end, questions multiplied. When exactly was the reassignment documented? Where's the personnel substitution form? Who holds authority to alter a named key person on a federal defense contract without approval? No one. Certainly not a margin-obsessed COO fond of flattening silos rhetoric. I stayed until 6:20, watching security logs cycle while Victoria's car exited early, probably heading to another call about nimble teams outrunning legacy constraints. Before logging off, I added to my file, 5:28 p.m. Clause 142A formally breached. DCA confirmation received. No remediation initiated. The invite arrived cloaked in politeness. Legal seeks light clarification ahead of audit window. Routine. Conference be tomorrow? Attendees listed Victoria. 2 attorneys. And most telling, a DCA field auditor. Not prep, confrontation. I accepted with one word. That evening I printed only the critical page, Clause 142A. Subsection 1. Enlarged to 14 point. Highlighted yellow for the title. Red for the prohibition on unapproved changes. No modifications to the designated key person may be enacted without 30 days written notice and contracting officer approval. Unauthorized substitution renders the contract non-executable pending review. I arrived 20 minutes early. The building still yawned into morning. Empty carafes. Stale pastries. Recycled air thick with denial. In Conference B, I retrieved tape from the AV cabinet, smoothed the page onto the podium face, and secured all 4 corners with deliberate precision. No witnesses. When Victoria entered, she paused half a second at the sight, then recovered with a wide smile. Sarah, wonderful you could join. I nodded, happy to clarify. Legal filed in avoiding the podium. The auditor last, dark suit, badge clipped, expression professionally blank. Legal opened, internal alignment on updated process flows. The auditor raised a hand. Clarity on key person designation first. Victoria interjected smoothly. The role has been administratively rebalanced into facility services. Essential functions preserved under revised ownership. The auditor read the taped clause silently, then underlined one sentence with deliberate slowness. No changes without written notification and approval. He asked Victoria, was authorization submitted to the contracting officer in writing? She cited the org chart. Emails are not formal notification, he stated calmly. Legal scrambled through binders. Someone murmured about internal distribution. The auditor remained unmoved. Silence stretched. I reached into my folder and slid across a highlighted email chain. Victoria's memo 4 weeks prior routing the realignment internally only. Process as realignment. Optics only. No external routing necessary. No signature. No PSF attachment. No legal copy. The auditor noted it. Senior counsel, Mark stared. You didn't submit the personnel substitution form. Victoria's voice sharpened. We moved quickly. The auditor. That appears to constitute a compliance breach. I must notify the contracting officer that the designated key person was removed without approval. The room's oxygen seemed to thin. The senior counsel closed her laptop slowly. The board chair, arriving late, absorbed the scene with unreadable calm. He asked Mark, is the role required for contract validity? Mark answered clipped, yes. Clause 142A designates the key person. Change demands formal notice and DOD approval. None filed. The chair turned to the auditor. Contract status? Flagged non-compliant pending corrective action. Immediate reinstatement of the original key person with full authority may allow provisional approval subject to contracting officer review. The chair looked at me directly for the first time. Miss Mitchell, are you willing to resume your original duties as Security and Compliance Director effective immediately? My clearance remained inactive. He instructed compliance to reinstate it fully today. Victoria protested. This feels disproportionate. We don't need to unwind the entire structure over one technicality. The chair cut in. Removing the named key person isn't a technicality. It's negligence. She fell silent. He tapped his tablet. Closed session with investors this afternoon. Until then, Lang, you are on administrative leave pending review. No argument followed. Victoria sat pale. Fingers clenched around a phone that offered no rescue. The meeting dissolved quietly. I stood and left without waiting for dismissal. Security met me at the elevators with an envelope containing my original badge, full clearance restored. Key person designation active. My office door still bore my nameplate. Across the hall, Victoria's glass-walled suite stood dark. Movers had begun boxing her belongings. I didn't linger. For the first time in weeks, the building systems felt aligned again, not from shouting, but because the right name had returned to its place. 3 weeks later, the atmosphere had steadied. My office door remained. But the plate now read Security and Compliance Executive Director. Same space. Expanded authority. Quietly reconfigured. No fanfare memo. No recognition thread. People who once bypassed protocol now routed requests through me first. Documents waited in my tray. The dashboard auto-updated access. Facilities consulted before bay modifications. Even HR extended a training invite citing your recognized expertise. Victoria's former office stayed vacant. Lights off. Monitor unplugged. Eventually, Frosted Glass received a generic, reserved overlay. Her name vanished from conversation. Her LinkedIn updated to Consulting Transition Advisory. No mention of federal work. Naturally. What lingered most was the framed page on my wall, Clause 142A. Highlighted. Mounted in walnut. Procurement added a small brass plaque. Key person. Do not replace without prior approval. Visitors paused to read. Some nodded in understanding. Others asked, then regarded me differently, not for what I'd done, but for why such safeguards existed. I never received an apology. I didn't seek one. What I gained was deeper, leverage rooted in quiet competence. The infrastructure of trust, access logs, clearance chains, audit trails remained invisible to most. Yet when threatened, $62 million in contracts teetered. Flashy reorganization couldn't replicate 14 years of embedded knowledge. The building moved differently now. Steadier. Because the right person sat behind the right desk again. And the system remembered. In the quiet weeks that followed, small shifts accumulated. The vaults sealed reliably. SCF workstations verified exchanges without delay. Audit logs flowed through proper channels again. Colleagues who once whispered questions at reception now scheduled formal briefings. Even the catering crew seemed to brew better coffee on briefing mornings. Perhaps coincidence. Perhaps institutional memory reasserting itself. I never gloated. Never referenced the demotion except in necessary documentation. The framed clause served as silent reminder. Expertise isn't interchangeable with ambition. Victoria's departure left no dramatic scene. One day her parking spot sat empty. The next, her nameplate was gone. Investors received assurances the contract remained on track. Provisional approval came through once my authority was restored and the 30-day notice clock formally reset. The contracting officer accepted the corrective action plan I personally drafted, ironically the same procedures Victoria had dismissed as legacy overhead. In hindsight, the entire episode distilled a deeper truth about modern corporate life. Flashy disruption often masks disregard for the quiet scaffolding holding complex organizations together. I still arrive early. The parking lot feels familiar again. Mike from facilities waves. That vent panel finally stays put after proper engineering review. Interns smile less frantically. The digital directory retains its original font, functional, unpretentious. Occasionally, new hires ask about the framed clause in my office. I explain briefly. Certain roles carry designated responsibility under federal regulation. Change demands transparency and approval because the consequences of error extend far beyond any org chart. They nod. Some truly grasping. Others filing it away until their own clearance interview. At night, when the building empties and only security lights remain, I sometimes pause at the reception desk on my way out, now staffed by a capable recent graduate. The squeaky chair is gone, the monitor properly angled. I remember the weeks spent there compiling evidence, watching systems fray, answering questions I was no longer authorized to handle. The experience stripped away illusions about loyalty and recognition. Institutions value continuity more than they admit. Yet individuals often pay the price for pointing it out. What lingers is a subtle moral unease. How many other key people sit unrecognized until absence exposes the cracks. How many ambitious leaders view compliance as obstacle rather than foundation. Vanguard survived, not because of vision decks or agility slogans, but because one clause, one overlooked name, forced accountability. The contract didn't care about optics or personal brand. It demanded the right person in the right role. And when that alignment broke, the entire edifice trembled. I keep the original contract copy in my desk drawer, spine-worn, tabbed, initialed by hands long retired. It reminds me that power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet click of a badge turning green again, the steady hum of systems realigning, the knowledge that trust, once earned, can be reclaimed through patience and precision. The building breathes easier now.
So do I.
But the framed clause remains, a quiet sentinel against the next strategic pivot that forgets why certain roles exist at all.